The Whispering Hole was a local legend. Well, legend might be giving it too much gravitas. It was one of the many stories people in the village told to tourists with a smirk because it made them feel superior to ignorant townies. The wishing hole on Old Bones Hill. Whisper into it in the first light of dawn, give it something you can't bear to lose, and it will give you what you want. Or take more if it didn't accept your offering. What the wishing hole actually did varied depending on who you asked and how much they had had to drink. No one from the village itself actually believed the story, but they loved to elaborate on the core details like they did, adding things like they knew someone's cousin's neighbour's daughter-in-law who had tried it once and come away worse for wear, though they refused to say exactly how. The details slipped, like they didn't want to be held. Or maybe because the village wasn't a hub for creative minds, so their storytelling went that far and no further. It didn't matter. By that point, the townies were satisfied they'd heard a bona fide local legend and went home to write on their blogs or Facebook or whatever about their authentic English village experience. It was a harmless legend, a rural oddity, something to roll your eyes at. But some people still went up there. You could tell by the way certain desire paths never quite disappeared, even when no one admitted to walking them. By the way some people avoided looking up at the hill entirely, as if ashamed of themselves for believing such nonsense, even if only once. Desperation makes believers out of anyone, just not publicly. Old Bones Hill wasn't far from the village, but felt separate from it. I'm not sure how it got its name. It's probably actually translated from Saxon or Latin or something and is a bastardized version of a word that means something banal like bloody tall hill and has nothing to do with bones at all. The climb to the top was steep enough to give you thigh burn, but not so steep you needed climbing equipment. If you set out at midday, by the time you reached the top the sun was already sinking and the fields below had flattened into pretty green and gold sheets. My friends and I used to dare each other as kids to climb it at night so we could find the wishing hole at first light and wish our horrible teacher would get sacked. But our mums would have killed us for being out all night, so we never tried it. I found the hole by accident, not long after my 30th birthday. Or something close enough to accident to be comfortable. It wasn't marked. No stones, no signs, nothing to suggest it mattered. Just a small opening in the ground, barely wider than my hand, surrounded by dark, damp soil that didn't match the rest of the hillside. The grass around it was thin and pale, nothing like the beautiful greens of below, as if it had all but given up trying to grow there. It looked unimpressive, laughably so. I hadn't been looking for it. I had just needed space from my husband for a while. Our house was thick with tension after our 4th miscarriage. Our. Like he wasn't blaming me in his head at the 3rd loss and out loud for the 4th. He acted like I hadn't wanted a baby with my whole being, and his grief was the only one that counted. So I set out before 10 a.m, and by mid-afternoon I was sat atop Old Bones Hill, looking down on the village and contemplating my life. I remember feeling disappointed. After all this time, this was the Whispering Hole. This was the thing my friends and I had dared each other to find. I had to be wrong. It was just a rabbit scrape, or evidence of badgers or something. Nothing more. But the air felt wrong. The hill had been alive with sound on the way up. Wind through the grass, distant birds, the low, constant murmur of the village below. Standing over the hole, all of it dulled. Not gone exactly, just muted, as if the world had stepped back a pace to give the whole room to claim my attention. I crouched and leaned closer, peering into it. There was no bottom. Not darkness, not shadow, just a kind of blankness that my eyes couldn't settle on. When I tried to see further, my gaze skittered away no matter how hard I focused. It felt like I had no control over my eyeballs. That, plus the odd atmosphere, made me uneasy in a way I could not quite explain. I felt like I was looking at something that wasn't meant to be seen at all. Maybe the Whispering Hole hadn't ever been there before. Maybe it just appeared when the truly desperate needed it. I laughed then, thinking how ridiculous it was to feel unsettled by a patch of dirt. I stood up and told myself I was being stupid. It was just a hole in the ground. There were thousands of them around the countryside. Tourists got their feet stuck in them all the time, and their companions had to carry them back to the village after they wrenched their ankles in stupid shoe choices for hiking. I went home. That should have been the end of it. But the memory of the Whispering Hole stayed in my head. For the next few days, it would pop back into my thoughts whenever my husband and I fought, or when the icy silence of his censure consumed the house and wrapped me up in his blame. When I saw the Amazon box with a baby mobile we never put together, I thought of that little patch of dirt. When my mum pushed a condolence card through our letterbox because she was the only other person I had told, but she knew my husband didn't like her and had banned her from the house, so she didn't ring the bell. I thought of the strange quiet on the top of Old Bones Hill. One night, I woke without meaning to, and looked at the clock, calculating how long it would be until dawn. Our bedroom was still dark, and I could see the angry lump of the body on his side of the bed turned away from me. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, thinking about nothing and everything, until the thought of the hill slipped in once again. First light of dawn. That was the rule that stuck around in every retelling of the story that I had ever heard. I told myself I was going for a walk to make me sleepy, since I was awake and restless. The night air was cold enough to bite. The village was quiet, curtains drawn, doors shut tight against the morning. No one saw me leave. Old Bones Hill felt different at that hour. When I crested the top, the sky was pale, the sun on the verge of edging over the horizon to spill weak light across the fields. I found the Whispering Hole again without searching. To be honest, it felt like it had all but manifested in my path to ensure I saw it. Yes, I am aware of how ludicrous that sounds. I stood over it, feeling faintly stupid. I put my hands in my coat pockets to hide them from the cold, which was when I realized I had brought something with me. I felt it nudge against my knuckles, the chilly slide of thin metal and cut diamond. My grandmother's wedding ring. It was all I had left of her, since her second husband had outlived her and sold their house to move to London and spend Mum's meagre inheritance, living it up doing whatever elderly widowers spend money on there. Mum had given me my grandmother's ring on my wedding day as my something old, and I had cried and hugged her so tight it left her breathless. I hadn't meant to bring it. I don't remember taking it from my jewellery box. Yet it was there, in the centre of my palm when I drew it out of my coat pocket. It was the only thing I had left that felt anchored to my family, since my husband said they were a bad influence on me, and I was reduced to only texting my mum when he wasn't around, and then deleting my message history in case he checked my phone. The wishing hole on Old Bones Hill. Whisper into it in the first light of dawn, give it something you can't bear to lose, and it will give you what you want. My stomach tightened. I could have turned back then. I think about that sometimes, how easy it would have been to just walk away. I was still chock full of hormones from the pregnancy. That was probably why I was acting weird. But I was already there. The sun was already rising, and there was something I wanted very, very much. I knelt. The ground was damp beneath my knees. I held the ring over the Whispering Hole, hesitating just long enough to feel the weight of it one last time. It felt like family and connection, and for a moment I felt like I could smell my grandmother's lavender perfume again. Then I dropped it into the hole. There was no sound, no clink, no thud, nothing to suggest it had landed anywhere at all. It simply vanished, swallowed by that blank, depthless space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air shifted. I felt a strange kind of pressure, like the world was leaning in. The silence deepened until it felt solid, pressing against my ears, my throat, my chest. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I don't know how to explain that I knew in that moment that my offering had been accepted. I had given up something I could not bear to lose, and the Whispering Hole was asking me to tell it my deepest desire. So I told it. It wasn't a long wish. It didn't need to be. It had been forming for months, maybe years, sitting heavy and unspoken inside me. It slipped out easily, like it had just been waiting for me to let it use my voice to leave my brain. When I finished, the silence snapped. The hill rushed back into being around me, sound returning in an instant. The wind, the distant birds, the faint hum of life below. I jerked back, heart pounding, suddenly aware of how ridiculous I must look, kneeling in the dirt, whispering into a hole like a child playing at magic. Nothing had changed. Of course it hadn't. I laughed awkwardly and stood, brushing the damp soil from my hands and knees. The sky was brighter now, the sun fully breaking over the horizon. The moment had passed. I looked down at the little hole in the ground, and it just looked like a hole in the ground. Nothing mysterious or supernatural about it. I went home. My wish came true 3 days later, albeit not in the way I expected. I got the phone call from my husband's work. I didn't drive. He said I wasn't allowed. I think it was because he thought I might drive away. So his boss came to get me and take me to the hospital. He stayed with me as we waited for news, and when the doctor came through, shaking his head and apologising, my husband's boss asked me who he could call for me. I told him my mum, passing over my mobile, which was when I realised at some point my husband had gone through it and blocked my mum's number. His boss pursed his lips when I said that, too dazed not to be honest, and went into the corridor to tell my mum what had happened. She arrived in a whirlwind of hugs and apologies, and between them they took me home. His boss was shocked when he saw the half-decorated nursery and stacked Amazon boxes containing baby items. Apparently, my husband had told everyone on the job site that we had decided to be child-free by choice. That shocked me more than anything else, to be honest, and I blurted out that he had blamed me for all the miscarriages and seemed so upset at not getting to be a father. His boss had pursed his lips again, making an expression I was in no state to understand, and my mum had gone to make a pot of tea for us all. In the weeks after the funeral, people kept telling me how strong I was. I didn't feel strong. I felt hollowed out, like something had scooped the centre of me clean and left the rest standing by accident. I was a porcelain woman, nothing but the veneer of solidity with nothing underneath. One stiff breeze and I would topple over and shatter, spilling my secrets all over the floor. The Whispering Hole had killed my husband. I was certain of that, even though it was impossible. It could not have given him an aneurysm, but I could not convince myself it was not involved. I dreamed of the hole, my grandmother's ring, the strangeness up on the hillside, and woke with the truth of it sitting in the middle of my thoughts like a squatting dog taking a shit. My mum stayed. She filled the house with noise and movement and the smell of proper tea. Strong, 2 sugars, just how I liked it. The kind I had not realised I'd stopped drinking until she made it for me without asking. I had been drinking herbal stuff for so long that I'd forgotten how much I prefer plain old PG tips. Later, I discovered it was the tea that had been triggering my miscarriages. My husband had bought some special herbal tea he said would help with morning sickness, since I was suffering from it so badly. I thought he got it from Holland & Barrett, but in actuality, he had bought it online from some dodgy seller. Apparently, He really liked the idea of me being pregnant and reliant on him, since my first pregnancy was what had made me compliant about cutting off friends and family. But the idea of an actual baby freaked him out too much to let me go full term. Prick. My friends thought I was foolish for picking my husband over them, and honestly, I can't blame them. They felt betrayed by me because I had betrayed them for a man who had never loved me, just loved what I could do for him. No amount of self-discovery was going to take away that I had been cruel to them when they had been trying to help me. After a while, when it became clear just what an arsehole he had been and how much I had been suffering under his thumb, some of them sent tentative olive branch texts. But I never held it against those who chose to leave our friendship as dead and buried as he was. His boss came by more than anyone else. At first it was practical. Paperwork, forms, things I couldn't make sense of through the fog in my head, and which my mum was too worried she would mess up and anger HMRC. He sat at the kitchen table and worked through everything steadily, never rushing me, never speaking over me, never deciding things for me. He asked me things. That was what I noticed most through the fog. He asked what I wanted to do with the house, asked whether I wanted help calling people, asked if I was all right before he assumed I wasn't. He didn't tell me I was being stupid or emotional, and didn't criticize me for being too slow or too clumsy when I tried to fix a sandwich for him. Instead, he told me to sit and made food for all three of us. It felt so unfamiliar to have a man around who met the standards for basic decency, and threw into sharp relief just how much my husband had not. He stayed for tea one evening at my mum's behest. She shepherded us into the living room while she made lasagna, and we chatted about everything except my husband, or the things surrounding him. It was nice. I reminded myself multiple times that I was a fresh widow, and it was inappropriate for me to think any man was nice right now. But there you go. I enjoyed myself. My mum liked him. I could tell by the way she let herself leave the room sometimes when he was there, as if she believed I would be all right without her watching me every second, despite my grief. Time moved on. Not quickly, not kindly, but steadily enough that I didn't notice the exact moment grief loosened its grip and became something I could carry instead of something that carried me. Spring came. The boxes in the spare room stayed where they were for a long time. I couldn't face them, those tiny clothes and the unopened mobile still sealed in its Amazon packaging. Then, one day, without really deciding to, I opened a cardboard box. Then another. Then another. I didn't cry. That surprised me more than anything else. I processed and organised everything, but I didn't weep for the life I'd lost. Instead, I began to shape the life I was living, the one I was going to live going forward. I kept some things and gave others away to a local charity that provided for needy families during the cost of living crisis. I let the spare bedroom become a room again instead of a half-finished nursery. I mourned the life I thought I was going to have, and the person I thought I was going to have it with. Neither were true or real in the end, and I let myself feel that before letting them go. Grieving ghosts is both harder and easier than grieving real people. He was there the day I finished emptying everything out and repainted. I hadn't asked him to come. I hadn't asked anyone. But when I opened the door that morning, there he was on the step with a pack of bin bags in one hand and that same careful, steady expression on his face, like he didn't want to presume, but also wasn't going anywhere. I hesitated for a moment, and then I let him in. I think there's a metaphor somewhere in that. He didn't make a fuss about the boxes, or turn it into something symbolic or heavy. He just got on with it, breaking down cardboard, sorting things where I pointed, asking before he touched anything that looked like it might matter. At one point I found him in my kitchen, struggling to make toast on the grill since I don't have a toaster. He looked at me like he'd been caught doing something he shouldn't, and admitted he had brought crumpets and Marmite with him, since my mum had told him I'm one of those strange people who actually like it. I smiled. It was the first time in months it didn't feel like an effort. he stayed for tea. After a few weeks, he stayed for breakfast. Then, gradually, he just stayed. Not all at once. Not in a way that felt like something was being replaced. There was no sudden shift, no moment where grief vanished and something new took its place. It just grew, this thing between us, quietly but surely, like a potted aspidestra that's been given a bigger pot and the right conditions to flourish at last. Eventually, I stopped thinking of him as my former husband's boss. That connection loosened, then fell away entirely, until there was no shadow of that old life between us. He became simply himself, and I became someone I hadn't been allowed to be for a very long time. I noticed the differences in small things. The way the house sounded, the way I moved through it, the way I stopped bracing myself for criticism that never came. He asked me what I wanted for dinner and actually waited for an answer. He let me show him things instead of taking them out of my hands. He listened when I talked instead of telling me I was being ridiculous, even when what I was saying was messy and unfinished. He let me cry. He made me laugh. Eventually, he made me sigh with happiness I never knew I was even able to feel. We never went up Old Bones Hill together. I thought about suggesting it when everything still felt fragile and new, but the idea never made it past the edge of my thoughts. There are some things you don't revisit, not because you're afraid of them exactly, but because you understand on some instinctive level that they have already done what they were meant to do. I didn't need to see the Whispering Hall again. I had already stood over it once, felt the world shift and press in, and given it something I could not bear to lose. Now, the things I could not bear to lose weren't as small as a tiny ring in my pocket. I did not want to do anything to risk them. So, a whole year crept by, and though I sometimes looked up at the hill through the bedroom window in the early morning light, I never went up there. There was no dramatic moment that marked the final stage of my miracle from the Whispering Hall. Just a missed period. Then another. Then a test balanced on the bathroom sink while I pretended not to watch the seconds tick past. I took another the next day, and another after that, as if repetition might somehow make it less likely to slip away. But this time, there was no bitter herbal tea pressed into my hands, no careful watching or sense that I was being managed or contained. There was only me, and the life I was building with a man who stood beside me without trying to shape me into something smaller and more convenient for him. When I told him, he didn't speak at first. He just looked at me as if committing the moment to memory. Then he laughed, soft and disbelieving, and pulled me into him with the kind of careful certainty that felt nothing like the desperation I had known before. My mum cried, of course. Properly cried, hands over her mouth, her whole body shaking before she gathered herself and laughed through it. The house filled again, but this time it was warmth instead of tension. I could enjoy being pregnant, and while the threat of miscarriage did not go away, I knew I had people in my corner to support me this time. Fear sat at the edges of my brain instead of at the centre, something I could acknowledge without letting it swallow everything else. When my daughter was born, she arrived loudly and furiously, with no regard for my expectations or our careful attempts at preparation. She was red-faced and furious and gloriously, unmistakably alive. I laughed when they placed her in my arms, a sharp and bright sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside me, somewhere that had been locked away for years. He laughed too, more than a little overwhelmed. His hand wrapped around mine as if anchoring himself to the moment. I felt united with him in this new endeavour upon which we were embarking. As she grew, she learned to talk and ask questions about everything. We started with the usual nursery rhymes and fairy tales, and then, as the years passed, I found myself telling her the sorts of stories villages collect and pass down, whether they believe them or not. And yes, I told her about Old Bones Hill, about the climb that made your legs ache, and the view at the top where the fields stretched out like a patchwork quilt. I told her about the Whispering Hole, and how people said you could whisper your wish into it at first light if you brought it something precious enough that you could not bear to lose. She always asked the same question in that earnest, serious way children have when they think they're on the edge of understanding something important. Did it work? I would smile and tell her that people said it did sometimes, that it depended on what you gave and what you asked for, and whether the whole decided your offering was enough. I told her that most people didn't really believe it, not properly, but that some still went up there anyway, just in case. I never told her that I had. I never told her about the ring, or the silence, or the way the air had felt like it was listening. I never told her about the timing of things, about how one life had ended and another had begun in a way that was too precise to be comfortable. But sometimes, when she laughs in her sleep, or reaches for me with those small, certain hands, I think about it. About the hill. About the hole. About the life I am living now, and the one I had before. I don't know what would have happened if the Whispering Hole had not accepted my offering. I try not to think about the great risk I took. Maybe it would have been me who had the aneurysm and collapsed on the floor, bits of blood and brain leaking out through my nose. Maybe it would have taken my mum to punish me for asking it for more than it felt I deserved. The Whispering Hole is old magic, you see. Older than the village, older than human memory, older than the hills themselves. It's the kind of magic that reaches through time and offers and takes with the same supernatural hand. You don't mess with old magic. Not unless you're stupid. Or desperate. Still, on certain mornings, when I wake before dawn and the light is just beginning to creep through the curtains, I feel that same quiet certainty settle over me. Not fear. Not anymore. Something softer than that. Something like balance. And when my daughter asks me to tell her the story again, I do. I tell her about the Whispering Hole on Old Bones Hill, and I keep my voice light, like it's just another silly village tale told to frighten and impress tourists and ignorant townies. But I always make sure to tell it properly. Don't go up there if you're not prepared to lose as much as you gain.